Hey everybody, welcome back to the Nidus Anarchy series. I'm your host Adam, CIO, co-founder of Nidus, and today I'm excited to have Dr. Carsten Stöcker from Dusseldorf, Germany, from Spherity. He's going to be at EIC this summer, and I'm really excited to be able to speak with you because you're doing amazing things in the decentralized identity world and a lot of other fun stuff that I'm actually really want to learn from you as much as I can during this talk. And right before we started, you mentioned there's like a lot of Japanese people in Dusseldorf, so it's like little Japan over there. And I thought that was pretty interesting because I lived in Japan when I was a kid for a while, went to school there, and then I also studied Japanese when I was in college. And one of my favorite places to ever visit is Germany. So it seems like an interesting mix of places I should probably check out.
Excellent. No. So yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
Cool. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your background? I mean, your background is extensive with Spherity and then also with the World Economic Forum. I mean, you are an esteemed colleague, physicist. I mean, probably one of the smartest people I've talked to so far. So give me a little bit of background about yourself and Spherity.
Yeah, so I'm a physicist. So I worked for Accenture for almost 30 years. I worked across multiple industries and did large-scale IT projects. Yeah. And I think that's a skill set I really need right now because this decentralized identity, you never know. So in which domain, which use case, which industry, where is it picking up to be adopted? Yeah. Whereas I think you have this crossing the chasm, yeah. So where are
Mhm.
people really crossing the chasm in an ecosystem to adopt the technology? For that reason, it's very helpful to have had worked across industries. So I worked with Accenture. Then I joined the utility. I was responsible for the IT of the energy traders. So basically kind of investment bankers or whatever financial traders in the energy sector. And then I joined the innovation hub and I did technology-driven business model innovation. And in 2014, I started kind of, let's say, to find out about the combination of blockchain and IoT, a combination
Wow.
of machine learning, IoT, identity. At first, I thought a colleague said, "Hey, Carsten, we have to look into decentralized identity." And I said, "Hey, identities must be pretty boring. Yeah, it must have been solved. It's a red ocean market. Yeah, there's so many identity service providers and solution providers." And so I thought, that's nothing for me. But in the end, so I did a lot of kind of use case research, 3D printing on a blockchain. We printed cufflinks with a 3D printer. We did kind of wallets in cars with self-sovereign identity wallets in cars. We did kind of charging automation, peer-to-peer energy trading, all of this very early. I think it's still too
Wow.
early for these kind of propositions. But I learned about that in each of these propositions there's identity, and then we founded Spherity, and the name Spherity is inspired by the World Economic Forum because they define the fourth industrial revolution as bridging the physical, biological, and digital spheres, and that's basically what we do when we move into cyber-physical systems, Industry 4.0, then everything is interacting with everything else in the digital fabric. And then you need decentralized identity because in terms of the combinatorics, if you think about end supply chain actors, you have, let's say, a big supply chain of companies, humans, IoT devices, whatever, agents, machine learning agents, whatsoever. And then when N is so big, and then the possible combinations of combining two is of the order of N to the power of two. But if you then think in terms of an ecosystem use case where 3, 4, or 5 parties connect, then suddenly the combinatorics, there are potential combinations when you connect 5 of N to the power of 5. Yeah. And this is so big, you cannot master, it's impossible to master it with a centralized system or with a bunch of federated systems that are somehow connected. It's just impossible. And for that reason, we put all our eggs in the basket of decentralized identity at Spherity. And at Spherity, we look into regulated industries, so organization identity, object identity. Sometimes people call it digital twins or digital product passports. So this is what we do for regulated industries, primarily pharma, energy, financial services, and automotive. And this is where kind of this cross-industry skills are now relevant because so where's the adoption? Yeah? Where's the
Yeah.
annual recurring revenues? Because that's what people are up to make sure we get the annual recurring revenues in place. Yeah.
So I just learned about digital twin. I've never even heard of this term until yesterday, actually. A completely separate forum. Could you kind of go into what a digital twin is? Like, And from what I understand, it's like it's a digital duplicate of a physical item, but what's the purpose and relevance of that?
Oh, a digital twin, I think, yeah. So people would like to, they have a physical item, yeah. And when they have a physical item, they would like to have a digital representation of these physical items. Primarily a digital representation that's telling the story about the item across the
Okay,
entire life cycle. It's primarily upstream, yeah. So what are the components? What is the provenance of the raw materials? Is there kind of child labor?
gotcha.
Whatever, is it child labor risk, yeah, upstream. They would like to hear about the story, but the story continues. You have all the parts, and there's a lot of kind of, let's say, momentum in Europe, yeah, to have the digital twin of components. You combine components to a product, and then, for example, if each component has a weight, let's say 100 gram, and then you add 10 components, and suddenly with digital twin, this is a very simple example, but anyway, you have the 10 components and you know the weight, and you add up the 10 times 100 gram, and then you know, oh wow, the weight of the product is 1 kilogram, yeah. And this very simple things to do calculations, but nowadays people kind of try to advance the so-called product carbon footprint, yeah. I have 10 components. What is a product carbon footprint? I add 10 components into one product. I add my whatever carbon footprint of the manufacturing process, and then I know the carbon footprint of the thing. But digital twins also for things that have not been built yet, an aircraft. Can simulate an aircraft and build a digital twin to optimize the aircraft without building it. And then it's the upstream, it's the downstream. I've finished good, and then I would like to know what are the specifications, how was it manufactured, what was the trusted release process. Maybe it's an IoT device, and I can combine the digital twin with all the IoT meter sensor readings, so they can then kind of expose to the external world, and then people aggregate the data, run simulations and optimization algorithms. Or digital twin, I think, can also be a jet turbine, yeah. A jet turbine where people, yeah, basically have master data, planning data, IoT data. And what's interesting, in 2017, I spoke to a jet turbine manufacturer, and then digital twins were kind of very kind of day-to-day business. But they said the biggest unsolved problem is, how do I make sure when I provide access to my digital twin that the other counterparty that says export compliant, yeah? So it's not kind of an unfriendly country. It's not a company on a sanction list and a couple of other things. So how do I make sure, yeah, these kind of things? And then we are suddenly again back to identity of the thing, identity of the companies, the systems that would like to access the data. And that's a pretty important concept. And nowadays, these people kind of, let's say, have a subset of a digital twin. They call it digital product passports. In Europe, there's a bunch of regulation moving forward to product passports, and the US is doing the same, by the way. The
So
Department
what
of
is that? Because that's new. We don't have that over. You guys have surpassed us in digital identities, this digital product passport. We don't even know what that is, let alone, and you're implementing it. So what can you tell me a bit about that?
So in Europe, we have a regulation called Ecodesign for Sustainable Products. And the idea is, and then they said, hey, and I would like to know, so how sustainable was the manufacturing process of a product? Yeah? Is it a green product? Is it whatever, another product? And then people said, we need to find out, we need to document it on a product level. And then you can distinguish between on a product, a batch, or a serialized item, or sold unit level. Then you can have different representations of a digital product passport. But you would really like to know the origin. Where's the raw material coming from? What is the region of origin in terms of raw material? Yeah. So who kind of was, what kind of mine was it? Is it a mine where there's a child labor risk? Yeah. What is the product carbon footprint? What are the specifications and other things? And that's all being part of the Ecodesign for Sustainable Products. And then people
How do you find that information though?
Oh,
like the mines, like, do you trust them to tell you, or do you have to investigate it yourselves?
This is something where you can, I think, yeah, you can do very sophisticated research in kind of defining the mechanisms, standardizing them. So there's huge standardization work going on to stand, because let's say in an electric vehicle battery, you have a tier 9 supply chain, whatever. tier 9, tier 10 supply chain, 10 suppliers, yeah, in a line. And then, for example, you have a small mine in Democratic Republic of Congo, I think.
Congo,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
The cobalt mines and stuff, yeah.
Yes, the cobalt mines, and then the cobalt is being kind of shipped to China because they get all the minerals out of Africa, and so then they do the refinements, the processing, the smelting, and then you get a little bit of other cobalt, and then whatever you do, probably you do it in a cathode of an electric vehicle, and there are a couple of these steps, and you never know when you buy the cobalt. I bought this, let's say I buy 1 kilogram of cobalt. And then there's a trader that's selling me the cobalt, yeah, or whatever. I buy it from another company in China. How do I know it's coming from mine A, B, or C when they source from mine A, B, or C? And all these things are very difficult, but so there's huge work going on to try to solve this problem in terms of traceability. So there are projects called supply chain discovery because of the regulation. Now companies start to hire consultants to do supply chain discovery because they don't know. They know the tier 1 supplier, maybe tier 2, and it's always a big trade secret. And now they need to know kind of the tier 9, yeah. And then they do supply chain discovery, and then they try to adjust the supply chains after they discovered it, maybe from moving from high risk to low risk, whatever, tier N suppliers. So this is ongoing, and the next step is to digitize it. I think this is a kind of boiling the ocean problem. If you really would like to kind of do it in a perfect way, you need to find some pragmatic mechanisms, and that's what the industry in Europe is up to solve at the moment. Yeah?
Nice. So
on the other hand, the most pragmatic, let me just finish this, is basically you have your digital product passport, then you send it to a digital product passport auditor, then you provide some, let's say, some evidence documents, and then the product passport auditor says, everything's good, I put my stamp on it, and then it's fine. And the stamp should be a verifiable credential, because then other people can verify that the product passport was being created by the manufacturer that puts the thing in the market, and an auditor basically checks that's kind of plausible. Yeah.
So is there public-private key involved with these digital passports to prove like provenance or uniqueness?
Yeah, I think when the Ecodesign for Sustainable Products was being done, so we talked to the people who were involved in the policy making, yeah, and we advised them to put in the law that we should have a verifiable digital product passport. Yeah. Oh. That's the reason why they started to put a verifiable digital product passport. And now, but the law doesn't specify how to do it. But it's pretty clear, you have to do it with verifiable credentials. There is no other way. Of course, there are different credential formats, however you count them, JSON and JSON ID and SD-JWTs and whatever. And unknown creds, you can have multiple. So, but it must be verifiable. And then signatures are involved, and then suddenly you find out, okay, I need kind of identity, decentralized identity, I probably need DIDs, and to sign the verifiable credentials. So this is ongoing work. In addition, people are starting because you have to put an identifier of an object, because people are starting to scan an identifier of an object to get the endpoint, the API endpoint of a digital product passport. Yeah, also known as digital twin, but here we talk about digital product passport. I scan it, I do the lookup, and get to the digital product passport API. So, and now the question is, what is the data carrier? Data carrier is the QR code, is it RFID, is it 2D data matrix that I can scan? And now the question, what is the identifier? So GS1 is doing heavy lobbying to make sure it's GS1 identifiers, because that's what they want to sell. Yeah. And but I think this is namespace. Yeah, I have to spin up a namespace, and GS1 makes sure there's no collisions. They sell chunks of a namespace to a manufacturer, and then they have their GTINs, the global trade identification numbers, and people put this there. The regulation in Europe is agnostic, identifier type agnostic. Now there's a lot of standardization work going on. If you look in the national, on the EU level, there's huge standardization work. Yeah, I think GS1 is of course, contributing to standardizations. But on the other hand, so a lot of people are starting to use self-certifying identifiers, also known as DIDs. Yeah? So putting a DID on a product. So there are a lot of proof of concepts where people put a DID on a product, and then you use the DID to resolve the service endpoint and do something. And then engage with the digital product passports for basically for lookup, yeah, because I think you could do it in a different ways. You don't need a full DIT to do a lookup. There is a project called MediLedger in US in the pharma supply chain.
Okay.
So they're basically merging a blockchain, a decentralized register with these identifiers for lookup. But lookup is a very, very big problem. People prefer not to use a centralized lookup registry.
I was gonna say, it seems like a blockchain solution.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But most people don't understand the lookup problem yet. And I think you can say, if I do a centralized database and every product, a lot of products being scanned, then the centralized database gets all the metadata, who scanned which product, when, from which manufacturer. This is the rule of supply chain. These metadata are worth billions. Yeah. So as a manufacturer, you don't want leaks. So then there's another kind of approach called federated catalog. Yeah? I spin up a database, and that's called a catalog. And then there's a protocol. So this federated catalog is replicated among multiple instances. Yeah. But this is, of course, not on the same, let's say, security proficiency level as blockchain. And the next version is blockchain. Yeah. I think blockchain for registries, for lookup registries, trust list registries, revocation registries, and decentralized identifier registries, I think this is a very, very good approach, and people are starting to adopt it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, that's actually pretty amazing stuff. So then would there be a way to introduce kind of like a zero knowledge proof solution where people don't have to necessarily give up their kind of trade secrets, but still verify, like, hey, look, I can show that it didn't come from a child labor mine, but I'm not telling you where because I don't want you to steal my supply chain. But like, has that kind of talk been happening at all?
Yes, so people started with the AnonCreds, combining zero knowledge proofs and AnonCreds. I think this failed because the AnonCreds are not standardized. There's no crypto analysis in terms of the cryptographic primitives. And if there's no crypto analysis in terms of cryptographic primitives, because it's still new, so they're not kind of fully sophisticated. So, which means the cyber agencies are not accepting it, And this is why Europe invented the so-called SDJOTs, selective disclosure JOTs. And it's basically, in very simple term, it's a signed JOT. And in the JOT, I have a list of hashes. And then a hash is representing a data item. And if I have 10 data items, and I have 10 hashes in the SDJOT, and then I as a holder can disclose the entire JOT. But I can basically then pick and choose which of the data items I disclose to the verifier. So no zero knowledge proofs involved. Yeah. I think it's still early. People kind of try to avoid it because it's too new. On the other hand, it's useful. And the best use case I personally like for the zero knowledge proofs is when it's combined with multi-party computation. Yeah. So I'm a very big fan of multi-party computation, but this is also multi-party computation is basically I have 3 nodes. Data are shredded among the 3 nodes. I can run an operation. For example, I can do a query on the 3 nodes. And the 3 nodes operators only see noise. They have no clue what kind of query I'm running on the 3 nodes. And one of the very, very best applications of multi-party computation is key management. There's a company called Unbound from Israel. I think they were the first.
Yeah, Unbound ID.
There's a couple of other companies, and they did the key management. And then the private key is shredded in 3 parts. If, for example, 3-party multi-party computation.
Ooh,
and the private key is not its software, but the private
never
key
exposed.
It's not put together during the signing process. It's always the entire time it's shredded. When I sign it, I don't need to put the private key together. And that's a very big innovation of multi-party computation. Yeah.
Wow.
And by the way, I think Coinbase bought Unbound, and a couple of the crypto asset custodian software providers, they have multi-party computation solutions for key management in place. Yeah.
That's awesome. I've never heard of that. That's exciting. So another product you guys have at Spherity is the Enterprise Identity Wallet. And this, I would imagine, is really catering to the decentralized ID. So what is your product there, and how have you seen that kind of scaling into the enterprise across Europe?
Yeah, so in US, we have this in production in the pharma supply chain. This is pretty cool. And in Europe, maybe it's worth to know the European. Have you heard about Gaia-X and Dataspaces, Adam?
Yes.
Okay. What is your best guess? How much is the European Union in total, with all the member countries, spending on Gaia-X and Dataspaces?
I don't know, hundreds of millions?
If I don't know if the number is right, 7.8 billion euro.
Jesus.
This
That's way
is
off.
Jesus. This is Jesus. And okay, some of the numbers you have to validate, whatever, yeah. But I think it's way beyond.
Way more.
It's way more than €1 billion, yeah.
Yeah.
This is really Jesus. And some of the big projects, they have a budget of, let's say, almost $500 million. The very big projects.
Wow.
And this is wow, because you need the money. Of course, you need money to do research, but this is investment in ecosystem building. Yeah, ecosystem means I bring the business people together, the tech people. I make sure they understand the technology. They start to adopting it. They start to agree on standards. They start to kind of find ways how to integrate with the legacy systems. And this is what the data space Gaia-X is doing. And at the heart of the data space, or many of them, is decentralized identity wallets. Yeah, they use the credentials on the control plane for authentication authorization. And some people, such as us and some others, are starting to use the credential also on the data plane for provenance, as provenance credentials. So for example, for digital product passport, I know, okay, I get some data on the data plane, but I know they have been issued, or maybe an audit about digital product passport. Very simple. Then I have it as a credential. The credential was issued by an authorized auditor of digital product passport. And then I basically can check, oh my God, it's digital product passport. I know it's coming from the manufacturer. In addition, there was an authorized auditor kind of issuing in very simple ways, in audit credentials. And then I, as a consumer of digital product passport, can basically kind of, let's say, put some risk scoring, thresholds, security, or whatever mechanism in place to say, okay, I can basically trust the data, and then I have kind of a score about the veracity of the data. And then you need to start using credentials on the data plane, and people are starting to do this. Yeah? And what's very interesting, one of the most advanced ecosystems, they are in production. It's the automotive supply chain, a project called Catena-X. And it's not only a German or European project. They have hubs in US, Canada, I think in Mexico, I think it's entire NAFTA. It's Japan, South Korea, China, and some other countries, because you cannot do it for Germany alone. It doesn't make sense. If the automotive supply chain is global, you must kind of spin it into other countries and make sure people are kind of starting to adopt it. And I would even say there's no other game in town. Because when you would like to do supply chain stuff, you need the trust model, you need conformance mechanisms, you need the standard. And because of this big ecosystem investment, Catena-X is super, super advanced. And right now, there's no other game in town. Yeah? It's very interesting.
So how are you doing digital or decentralized identities with your enterprise wallet? What's kind of the tech background there?
We use DITs. We use different DIT methods. Yeah. We use DIT Ethereum. Sometimes we use DIT Web. Most of the time we use these two DIT methods. Yeah. DIT Web and DIT Ethereum. We even have it on a public Ethereum. What's pretty awesome, maybe I need to provide some links, because what my colleagues did, they basically started to standardize in Ethereum as an ERC trust list. They call it trusted hint registry, but you can use for a trust list. A revocation list, also standardized. And then you have the standards to build an entire trust infrastructure for a given trust domain. I have a trust domain, and then with a trust list, a revocation list, a couple of other things. And this could be done completely decentralized. And you can do trust list discovery. You can connect it to the Ethereum name service. So you can do very awesome things. It's too advanced for many ecosystems.
I'm excited.
Yes, no, this is really great. I think that's probably something to share another time. But usually you have a trust list, and then you depend on the DNS, and then then you discover whatever a service endpoint via DNS, and then you find the trust list, blah blah blah, fully kind of DNS centralized stuff. But what you can do with the DNS, you can do it with the ENS. You can put Ethereum name service. You put the trust list on the Ethereum blockchain, and then you can do it fully decentralized. Yeah?
Nice. That's awesome. That's
very
so
nice.
cool. Yeah, I definitely want to get some info on that later, because that sounds pretty cool. Awesome, man.
Yeah. And I think let's say from a business perspective, so we do enterprise identity in financial services and automotive supply chains in the pharma industry. We always partner with an issuer for the onboarding process. We have a partner in the US called Legism, and they use an onboarding process. We are working with company registries, with government company registries, to inherit data from the official government registries. And this is important because it's called primary source validated data. In compliance and cybersecurity, you don't want to have a man in the middle. For example, there can be the official government source registry, but then there's a third-party company that doing kind of going to the registry and issuing credentials, but they can be kind of malicious, they can do mistakes, blah blah. In many use cases, you might want to go to the primary registry, and that's what we also do. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Have you seen the movie Silk Road?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, I love it because in Silk Road, people combined Bitcoin with the Tor network, and they said, "Hey, let's do a peer-to-peer marketplace, fully anonymous." I think they didn't figure out that Bitcoin is pseudonymous, but anyway, it's pretty famous. And what they traded is so-called controlled substances. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so drugs, whatever, mushrooms, cannabis. Weed, I think it's called weed.
That's how it always starts. It's the underground, and then all of a sudden people figure out, it's like, well, they just aren't getting taxed. As soon as they can figure out how to tax it, now it's okay.
What is very interesting is that so this happened on the blockchain, and then what's the name of the guy who did this? Sorry, I forgot the name. But if you're interested in it, watch the movie and go to I think it's United Nations database called Sherloc, and on the Sherloc with a Q, and in Sherloc you find the crime story of Silk Road. Yeah, it's awesome. But it was blockchain and controlled substances. At the same time, under the Barack Obama administration, they came up with so-called Drug Supply Chain Security Act. And they put a law in place to make sure that patient safety is protected, putting a couple of mechanisms in place, but also to make sure that controlled substances don't end in the wrong hands and don't end up on Silk Road. Yeah? And that's interesting because then MediLedger and a couple of others are solving this problem to bring us to the next level with blockchain. And this is what we find awesome as well. But the other point is, it's also awesome. So with the other company called Legism, so we can make use what the DEA is doing, the Drug Enforcement Agency, because they went to the US pharma supply chain actors, and said, "Hey, US pharma supply chain actor, let's check your identity, and if I checked it, I give you a DEA signing certificate." Yeah, and the DEA signing certs are used for some use cases in pharma supply chain, and so there's one process. Of course, there are others and some further compliance controls. But when we do the onboarding and companies have a DEA signing cert, so we ask them, "Hey, you claim to be manufacturer XYZ, show me your DEA signing cert." So we basically inherit some identity assertions from the DEA to speed up the onboarding process, which is also nice.
So it's almost like a verifiable credential from the DEA.
Yes, after we have done it in an onboarding process, then we issue an identity credential and a so-called authorized trading partner credential, and that's a license to operate. So in the US, you need an authorized trading partner credential by law, by Drug Supply Chain Security Act, and that's basically what we do because we issue an identity credential. So Legism looks up the federal federal databases, and then they find, this company has a license to operate as a wholesaler, manufacturer, and then they issue the credential. And this credential we put in peer-to-peer API calls. So there's an API call coming from your side. Adam, I will ask you for your authorized trading partner credential. You give it to me, and then I know you must be Adam, whatever, authorized manufacturer, for example.
Right.
And then by law, I'm allowed to do digital interactions with you. So we are basically, I think that's how we have to do it, because everyone is searching for annual recurring revenues, and we're basically playing chess as a digital identity space. So we have 3 opportunity spaces: pharmaceuticals, financial services, and automotive. And we are basically playing simultaneous chess in all these 3 things to make sure one of them gets. So we have some annual recurring revenues, but kind of to get the real traction, they have to continue playing 3 chess on 3 chessboards simultaneously. Eventually, all of these games will merge in one big decentralized identity. In terms of blockchain, there's 3 types of blockchain. There's a public blockchain, then there is private permission blockchains, and then now we have a third category in Europe that's called a qualified electronic ledger.
Okay.
And this is a very interesting innovation, because when I would like to use the blockchain where legal compliance is involved, then the cyber agencies are involved. They come with the requirements in terms of, for example, crypto agility, in terms of maybe right to be forgotten and some other things, whatever requirements they come. And basically, these requirements are kind of, let's say, preventing to use blockchain for use case where legal compliance is involved. And that's the reason why people invented the qualified electronic ledgers, where they basically say, yes, we need node operators that are trust service providers, where conformance assessment body has checked that they run the process and technology in proper way, first, and second, that the technology fulfills the requirements of the cyber agencies. For example, crypto agility to move to different cryptographic primitives in terms of post-quantum cryptography, let's say as an example, but also in terms of proof preservation or data retention for the next 30 years. All this kind of stuff must be solved for putting this in practice. And this is very interesting, because it's a kind of, let's say, a very, very special permission blockchains where node operators must be trust service providers. They have run through a conformance assessment, where the technology fulfills all the fancy requirements that it shall fulfill. And then suddenly you can basically use blockchain as a tamper-proof registry. And there's EIDAS regulation, where at least the Spanish people, of course, I think there must be other nations involved as well, but I know the Spanish people, so they put it in the legal text in the regulation that qualified electronic ledger, so this very special blockchain, can in the future eventually be used for use case involving legal compliance, including EIDAS 2.0. And this would be a very, very big step change going forward, because if you think about, let's say, use cases where critical infrastructure is involved, and in many use cases, let's say at least in some edge, whatever, at the edge there's some critical infrastructure involved, or it's kind of critical, whatever. But then you should make sure you have a kind of a qualified electronic ledger to make sure it fulfills all these fancy requirements that you can really trust it. And this is pretty interesting, awesome innovation, and people don't even know what the impact is in terms of adoption. I think so. I'm a big fan of it. I think it takes maybe 4-5 years, until this is fully in operations with all the standardizations, the trust service providers, conformance assessment. But this is a very, very big innovation from my perspective.
Wow, that's pretty cool, man. It's amazing how far you guys are in Europe with decentralized just technology in general. I've been promoting it here for years, but it's so slow to be adopted. I'm really excited to get out to EIC and really see what's happening. And so you're speaking on the panel at the EIC conference in the summer. So I'm going to be very excited, because I'm absolutely going to come watch.
No, absolutely. I think I'm there on Friday, the last day of the conference. But let's make sure we meet there.
Cool. I'll definitely meet you in Berlin. I'm very excited. Thank you for coming on. This has been amazing. I've learned a ton. I've been taking notes, even though I know I can watch this video later. I've been taking like crazy amounts of notes here of stuff that I'm immediately going to be looking up and diving into over the weekend. So I wish you the best of luck. I mean, you definitely are on the right path, I feel. And I mean, this has been amazing. So I really appreciate your time. How can people get a hold of you if they want to find out more information about you or Spherity and the company itself? What would be the best way to reach out?
I think via LinkedIn, yeah.
LinkedIn. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, Carsten.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. And yeah, looking forward to meeting you in person very soon.
Hey everyone, you going to Identiverse this year, May 28th and 29th in Las Vegas? We're going to be there, and we're going to make it awesome. How? We're having a scavenger hunt where you can win awesome prizes and cool fun stuff like an invite to our private party. The way that you're going to find it is find these little poker chips all over the convention, tap your phone to them, and that's how you're going to start the scavenger hunt. Lots of cool prizes, and not everyone's going to be able to make it. Hope you can do it. I'll see you guys there. Later.